Movement Church. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there with you guys this morning. I am at the Ponderosa camp, teaching for, I don't know, 200 or 300 kids, a bunch of students, a bunch of knuckleheads out here. And so I just wanted to give a message to you, MJ. In fact, I don't want to do it. I think they want to do it. So let's do it together. Ready? Here we go, everybody. 1, 2, 3.
Thanks, everybody. Hi, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Movement Church on this fine Sunday in January. My name is Melissa Janish. I am a member of the teaching team here. And I see so many faces in the crowd that maybe we're not familiar to each other, so I just want to do a really quick introduction. This is my family. Anyway, this is Jonah. Jonah, wave your hand. Jonah just turned 21 on Friday. Then there's Julie. Julie is also here. She's my 19-year-old daughter. This is my 12-year-old Maddie. If you can't see her shirt, she's wearing a 6'7" Santa shirt. If you know, you know. If you're a parent or a teacher, you know, and you hate that number. This is my daughter, Miley, on the end. She's 15. And then here in the middle is my beautiful mom. She's here today, too. I am not going to share her age with you. If you want to ask her, you can, but that's rude. So it's up to you. And then over here, we have my very handsome husband, John. He's right there. He skipped golf today to be here, so let's all thank him for showing up. Yep. So anyway, January, right? January. I want to start today by taking a little poll. I'm a teacher by trade, and something we often do to make sure everyone is tracking is we do a thumbs up, thumbs down method. So here's what we're going to do. Don't show me yet, but I want to poll you guys and see how you feel about the month of January. If you love January, you think it's the best month of the 12, new beginnings and resolutions and exciting and all that, you're going to give me not yet a double one of these high up in the air so I can see it. If you feel meh about January, like you could take it or leave it, it's fine, it's just another month, we're moving along, you're going to give me one of these, right in the middle. And if you think January is the worst thing to ever happen to a year, you're going to give me a double one of these. Thumbs down, okay? And I want to tell you before we do this, no judgment. I will not judge you for your answer. Back in December, I was shamed by the speaker for putting up 7 Christmas trees, and I will not shame you today for your response to me, so I learned a little lesson there. Okay, so here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, give me your thumbs. Okay, so interesting. John Wilson is giving me a big thumbs up. Sue in the back is giving me a big thumbs up. I've got Maya. I've got lots of middle. Here's the thing that's hilarious. The people who are down, Rudder, I see you're down. The people who are down are aggressive. They're like, no, January, not my thing. That is how and I'm not going to lie, most of the teachers of the world feel about January. Okay? It's not the most fun. I can tell you that Jonah's birthday is in January. My birthday is in January. It is my least favorite month of the year. It's dreary, it's cold, the days are super long and short all at the same time, and everyone is on a diet. Everyone is grouchy. This guy is literally screaming into his salad. Like screaming into the abyss of his salad. I have been there. Many of you have been there. January, not my favorite month. So I figured, what better month of the year than January to talk about suffering? Right? Let's get into it. Let's talk about suffering. All through December, we talk about joy, right? We talk about gifts and miracles and the wonder of the birth of Jesus. We don't talk a lot about suffering and struggle in December. And I always kind of wonder why. I recently was talking to my husband, and he was sharing something that I think maybe Fike had told him, and that is that pastors are discouraged from talking about anything other than the birth story in December. People who come to church want to hear about the birth of Jesus in December. That is what December is for. And so I think we miss the fact that December can actually be a really rough month for a lot of people. Maybe it was a rough month for you. Maybe it's always a rough month for you. Maybe it's because you're looking back on a year that was just generally rough. Not a lot of great things happened. Maybe it's because you lost someone, and the holidays make that feel so much more profound, right? Maybe it's that you don't feel financially able to do all the things that December asks you to do, right? The constant parties and dressing up and gifting and cookie exchanges and all those things. Maybe the financial stress feels like too much. Or maybe someone you love struggles with addiction or mental health struggles, and the holidays, they amplify those things, right? They bring those things out. There are an endless number of reasons that people might struggle and not find joy in the month of December. And here's the thing, struggle and suffering are a reality. It's a reality of human existence. It's not going anywhere, and we're not in December anymore, we're in January, so let's talk about it. Today we're going to talk about a man who was living in an endless January. Everything was pure joy and celebration for this guy. He had the world at his feet. It was a forever December, right? And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he was dealt one miserable hand after another until he felt like he had absolutely nothing less. Anybody want to take a guess at who we're going to talk about today? Job. We're going to talk about Job. Now, let me tell you, when I began working on this message, I wasn't sure where the Spirit was leading me because usually us that are members of the teaching team, that's myself, that's Jeff Rudder, that's John Wilson, Justice Fike, sometimes will be up here, and of course Fike himself. We usually work off of a sermon series, right? So we're in Genesis or we're in Revelation or we're talking about a certain message. And so we get together as a team and everyone kind of decides, you're going to do this chapter, you're going to do this verse. So you know what you're talking about. But when I do something like today, which we consider a one-off, right? It's not a part of a series. I kind of am left to my own devices to ask God what he wants me to share with you in this opportunity that I have to be up here. And I can assure you, I was not like this. Please let me talk about Job in January. People are going to love this. No, I was not excited when I felt like that's where we were going, but this is where we ended up. And the thing about this book is there's not a lot of happiness in the book of Job. There's not a lot of joy. It is a book about struggle. And the interesting thing is that the book of Job and his existence in the Bible, it's a little bit of a mystery, okay? It's grouped in with these other books that are considered the writings, and it can almost stand alone as a story independent of anything else. We don't know for sure who wrote the book of Job. We don't know for sure when the book of Job takes place. We don't know for sure where the book of Job takes place. We have these little bits, like it says it's like somewhere in the land of Ur, but when you read what Bible scholars and historians have written, no one is really sure where this book came from. But it is here nonetheless. And the characters in this book, they seem to be almost caricatures. They don't always make sense. They often contradict themselves, and they appear and disappear out of nowhere. In short, we don't really even know if these events actually happened, or is this a literary device. But we cannot ignore the fact that it's here, that it's in the Bible. We know from 2 Timothy 3:16 that all scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be complete, equipped for every good work. So it is there because God wants us to learn something from it. There is something to be taken from this book. And so before we jump into Job's story, I want you to take a minute and just do a little self-evaluation. I want you to think about, close your eyes if you want to, get in your headspace. I want you to think about a specific event or circumstance that was hard for you in 2025. Maybe it's still going on. Maybe 2025 wasn't the end of it. Maybe it carried right over into 2026. Maybe there is absolutely no end in sight when it comes to this thing that you're struggling through. So if you're journaling right now, or if you're taking notes, write that thing down. Write it in a little bubble. Put a bubble around it. In a little bit, I'm going to give you 3 questions that I want you to ask yourself about this thing that you're going through or you've been through or that's still happening to you. I want you to keep that in mind as we jump into our lesson today. So here we go. As a reminder, last week, and if you weren't here last week, you can always listen to our messages on the YouTube channel. I think there's also a podcast link, so you can go back and revisit this. But last week, we read this in Matthew 6:33. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. This is going to sound crazy, but this, in a nutshell, is what the book of Job is about. Job will spend the duration of this book trying to understand. He wants to understand God's motives. He wants to understand God's methods. The book of Job is about suffering, yes, but it takes this vast conversation about suffering and struggle and trial and tribulation, and it narrows it down into this one-word question. Why? Why do we suffer? Why do we struggle? What is it for? If God loves the world, right, the whole world, according to John 3:16, he loves every single person in the world. Why would he let us suffer? Is there something to be gained in the struggle? Is there a purpose when we endure trials? This is where the connection between Job and searching for God's kingdom come together. Because suffering is not the end of the story, at least not anymore. But in Job's time, it was. So Job, he had been living this picture-perfect life. In terms of faith, he was a very faithful man. He did all of his sacrifices the way you're supposed to and did all the things. He also was a very successful man. He had a lot of wealth, a lot of family, great flocks. He had all the things. And all of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, his family is taken from him. His wealth is taken from him. His prestige is taken from him. His health is taken from him. He's left kind of in a pile of rags on the ground when all of these things transpire. And so here we go. This is how he reacts. Look at this. Let the day perish on which I was born, and the night that said a man is conceived. Let that day be darkness. May God above not seek it, nor light shine upon it. Let gloom and deep darkness claim it. Let clouds dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. That night, let thick darkness seize it. Let it not rejoice among the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. And he kind of goes on like this, just lamenting every single detail of his conception, of his birth, on repeat. And then he lands on this thought. For then I would have laid down and been quiet. I would have slept, and then I would have been at rest. This is some high drama. Job is saying, it would have been better if I'd never even been conceived, never even thought of. At least then, I would be peacefully dead. So here's what you have to understand. In Job's time, we're talking approximately 2,000 years before Jesus walked the earth, their understanding was that there was no heaven. You couldn't be with God. You would never be good enough or perfect enough to be in the presence of God. They believed there was no real afterlife. This was it. If it went well, success. You had a great life. Now you can go be asleep. But if it didn't go well, you suffered, and then you died, and were gone forever. So if this is the main show, what purpose could there be in that? What could you get from your suffering? For most of this book, this is what Job is grappling with. If I have lived a righteous life as I've been taught, which God himself says that I have, then why has my existence been ruined? These things do not add up for Job, and he ends up kind of in this spiral of despair despair and depression and angst. He says, remember that my life is a breath. My eye will never again see good. The eye of him who sees me will behold me no more. While your eyes are on me, I shall be gone. As the cloud fades and vanishes, so he who goes down to Sheol does not come up. And he mentions this idea of Sheol several times. He has all these monologues that he delivers. They're all like this. They're all about like, my life is a disaster. It's over. Nothing else good can happen. And he talks about this place, Sheol. So what is this place? It's not anything good. It's not hell, but it's also not heaven. It's nothingness. It's the absence of being. So from Job's point of view, his life story has now been written, okay? He will suffer, and then he will die, lost to all, including God, forever. Do you guys see why I wasn't thrilled to talk about this today? What a dreary subject matter. And I am going to track with you guys. I'm watching your faces. As soon as I see I'm losing people, I'm going to pull some stuff out of my pocket. And my goal is maybe to make you laugh, but mostly to humiliate my children. So when we get there, you'll know. If you want to save my children, look interested. And then I won't have to embarrass them. Okay, so in the midst of all this, there's these three men, okay? We have Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. They are supposedly friends of Job, and they're going to come and sit with him during his time of suffering. Except they aren't really there to just sit. They're not just going to sit and keep him company and be with him. They all have something to say. They all think they know why Job is in the predicament that he's in, and they're going to tell him. So Eliphaz says this, remember, who that was innocent ever perished, or where were the upright cut off? As I have seen, those who plow iniquity and sow trouble reap the same. By the breath of God they perish, and by the blast of his anger they are consumed. In other words, it's a simple formula. If you are virtuous in the eyes of God, you won't suffer. If you have sin, God will smite you. You have been smited, so if it looks like a duck, then it's a sinful duck. You can tell this one is sinful because she has on red lipstick and sunglasses. Don't be this duck. Don't be a sinful duck. Just kidding. That's not what our lesson is about today. Anyway, super helpful, right, of Eliphaz. Luckily, Job has another friend. Thank goodness. Whew. He has another friend, Bildad. Bildad is going to come in. Maybe he has something super supportive to share. Bildad says this, does God pervert justice, or does the Almighty pervert the right? If your children have sinned against him, he has delivered them into the hand of their transgression. If you will seek God and plead with the Almighty for mercy, if you are pure and upright, surely then he will rouse himself for you and restore your rightful habitation. And though your beginning was small, your latter days will be very great. Do you hear that repetition? Blameless equals blessed. Not blameless equals done for, okay? Have you ever been in this situation where you are suffering and someone says to you, well, can I ask where is the sin in your life? I have. It's not helpful. And this isn't what today is about, but at some point I would encourage you to go read this for cues on how not to be a good friend to someone who is suffering. I just took a youth mental health first aid training as part of my training as a teacher, and I'm telling you, the Bible wrote it first. They did. The Bible wrote the youth mental health first aid training first. This is not how you support someone in crisis. But I digress. We have another friend. Oh my gosh, Job. He has such great friends. Here's Zophar. Zophar is going to come in. He's got something really helpful to say. If you prepare your heart, you will stretch out your hands toward him. If iniquity is in your hand, put it far away, and let not injustice dwell in your tents. Surely then you will lift up your face without blemish. You will be secure and will not fear. You will forget your misery. You will remember it as waters that have passed away. Okay, so we're still saying the same thing. Zophar's saying, you might not think you have sin, but you obviously have sin. And obviously God saw your sin and was like, this guy, I'm going to smite him. I have not been smitten because I don't really have sin, but you clearly do. You see where this is going? So these three friends, they have nothing new to offer, no good news to rejoice in. They have a simple formula, and they repeat it over and over again. A plus B equals C. They want and need for the equation to be simple, right? And Job does too. He cannot understand why this math isn't mathing. Have you heard young people say that? That's a real phrase. We use it in education. The math ain't mathing. And for Job, he doesn't understand. I did A plus B. Why am I not getting C? So I want to ask you this. How many of you out there are familiar with Common Core math? Oh, there we go. Yep. Can I just get a big thumbs down? I don't care how you feel about it. It'll just make me feel better. Common Core math is the worst. This right here is a perfect representation of Common Core math. We take an old math right here, right? 32 minus 12. A lot of us can do that in our head. Or you line it up, right? You write 32 minus 12 and you draw the line under it. It's been working for centuries. But we decided that we could find a better way to do it. So I'm a teacher. I should be able to explain to you what's going on right here. But to me, it's utter nonsense. They still get to the same answer, but they had to do all this stuff in the middle. It's so confusing. If you're a parent trying to help your kid with homework, you've probably had a conversation like this. Your kid comes up to you and says, hey, I need help with my math. And you go, oh, that's easy. I know how to do this. And you show it, you write it down, you do it. And they go, that's not how my teacher said we're supposed to do it. And you go, okay, how does your teacher say to do it? And then they write something like this, and you crumple up the paper and throw it at them. Has that ever happened in our house? Yeah. So you go round and round, and eventually you both end up with the same answer, even though this new math is way more complicated. Job and his friends, they have a math that makes sense to them. It probably even feels simple and easy, right? A plus B equals C. But as we're witnessing in real time, it doesn't go anywhere. This is dead-end math. This is a dead-end equation. But thankfully for them and for all of us in this room and all the people out there listening and walking around and going about their day, this new math that's about to come their way some thousands of years down the line is mind-blowing. It's incomprehensible. There is no A plus B equals C. Salvation is not an equation. Turn to somebody around you and tell them, your salvation, my salvation, is not an equation. Tell them. Yeah, there is a math at work here, but it's a math that none of us can understand. It's boundlessly complicated and utterly simple, all at once. Salvation is a gift for us to accept and receive, and I doubt that any of us are going to fully understand the math of salvation in this life. Certainly not Job in the midst of his, right? He still lives in a world where the end is the end, period, no more. Look at this spiral of despair he's caught in. He says these things. Job 9:13, God will not turn back his anger. Job 10:8, your hands fashioned me, and now you have destroyed me altogether. Job 21:7, why do the wicked live, reach old age, and grow mighty in power? And Job 23:8, behold, I go forward, but he is not there, and backward, but I do not perceive him. He just can't wrap his mind around it. This last verse, 23:8, sums it up for Job. I'm suffering, I'm struggling, and God is nowhere to be found. I look behind me, he's not there. I look in front of me, he's not there. This is so interesting. Does anybody know what the name Job means in Hebrew? How it's translated? So interesting. Job's name in Hebrew translates to, where is the Father? Right? I know. I went and unearthed some old archives and translated the Hebrew and came to that realization for you today. I also looked it up in a book that I had. But isn't that crazy? The Bible is so intentional, so purposeful with every single thing that it does. Where is the Father? And we're going to see more of that. Where is he? Where is God in my suffering and anguish? How could he let this go on? How many of us in this room have asked that question? Oftentimes, as believers, when we see suffering and pain in the world, we like to throw platitudes at people. We say, God is in control, God is sovereign, God has a plan. And these things are true. They are real. These are facts. But I wonder, do we use these same phrases on ourselves in our time of suffering? Do we tell ourselves, God is sovereign, God is in control, God has a plan, God is faithful? If you're taking notes, maybe make one here. What do I believe about God when I'm suffering and in pain? Okay, so we have these three men, and we have Job, and at one point, this book is crazy. It's just crazy. At one point, this mysterious figure named Elihu, appears out of nowhere. We don't know where he comes from. It doesn't say that he's necessarily a friend of Job's. Here he is. And he is a piece of work. So he says, for I am full of words, the spirit within me constrains me. Behold, my belly is like wine that has no vent, like new wineskins ready to burst. I must speak that I may find relief. I must open my lips and answer. Okay, this dude is literally full of hot air. He is gassy with self-righteousness. I don't know why I'm looking at Erica right now. She is not gassy with self-righteousness. But we all know someone who like this, who can't wait to share their wisdom with you in your time of suffering. I can tell you that in some of my hardest times, I have had some people say some of the worst things to me. And I can tell you that I have watched my friends go through some of the hardest times, and I have said the worst things to them. We just want to comfort, right? But oftentimes, there are no words. It's okay for there to be no words, right? It's okay to just sit with someone and let them be in pain and just let them know that you're there. Okay, so what in the world is going on in this book? We have these characters. We have Job. We have his three friends. We have this weirdo Elihu that shows up. Nothing is happening. No one's making sense. Everyone's just repeating themselves. No one is growing. No one is changing. This is a dead-end conversation, kind of like the dead-end equation. This is a dead-end conversation, a dead-end situation. Why is this story here? What are we going to learn from it? One of my favorite things about the Bible is how layered it is. There's always meaning to glean, not just in the words, but in the structures. I'll tell you what I mean after we look at chapter 28. This is a chapter that talks about the lengths that we go to find precious metals. Okay, right in the middle of Job and all of this discussion of suffering, we have this chapter about mining and the dangers we put ourselves through to pursue riches. The suffering will allow ourselves to gain material wealth. Job says this, surely there is a mine for silver and a place for gold that they refine. Iron is taken out of the earth and copper is smelted from the ore. Man puts an end to darkness and searches out to the farthest limit the ore in gloom and deep darkness. And so chapter 28 goes on like this. Job is saying mining for metal, right, for wealth, because we're looking for gold and silver and these precious metals, is dangerous. But we do it. We go to the ends of the earth to do it, to find a little tiny nugget of wealth. We'll go through a lot to get that little nugget. But then Job asked this question, but where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Man does not know its worth, and it is not found in the land of the living. I love how this discussion of mining for wealth and the search for wisdom is buried in a discussion where a man and his friends are mining for understanding. We have to do a little rock moving, right? When we read this book, we have to move a few rocks. But this gem is there. It's always been there. This one question seems out of place in the context of the story. Where is wisdom found? How far are we willing to go to find it? What kind of peril and struggle are we willing to go through to unearth it? Curious that this question would be put here in a discussion of the purpose of suffering. Why do we have a question about finding wisdom? How are these things connected? Look at this. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Okay, so we often, when we quote this verse, this is a familiar verse to a lot of people. When we quote it, we usually stop there, okay? And maybe when we keep reading on to the next verse, we read it as a separate thought, something else. But I think if we connect this next verse back to Job, these things are meant to be understood together. It says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. But let him ask in faith with no doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. For that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. A double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. Does this sound like someone we've just been reading about? Or, more importantly, does this sound like anyone you know? I'm going to be honest with you. This t-shirt right here sums up 2025 for me. 1 star, very bad, would not recommend. Last year was a tough one for me. I started out last year pretty much day one. I want to say it was January 1st or 2nd. Getting a call from one of my colleagues that one of our 7-year-old students was killed in a car crash. And it was painful for me. I'd worked with this student for a couple years. I knew him well. But what was really painful was the effect it had on Jonah, my son. Jonah also worked with him at a program at our school. And Jonah was crushed, utterly devastated. And if you are a parent, you know that there is no greater pain than watching your child suffer. It's one of the worst things you can endure. That was day one of 2025, okay? In February, I had all these health things coming together, and I was just feeling worse and worse, and it ended up that I had to have a blood transfusion. I was really, really sick. And 3 months later, related to that blood transfusion, I had to have a complete hysterectomy. That's hard for a woman. It doesn't matter how old you are, especially hard for someone like me at age 25 to have, why are you guys laughing? But you really do. It doesn't matter what age you are. That is a period on the end of your childbearing years. There will be no more children. And it's hard to cope with it. There's mental angst that comes from that. So I was dealing with that, and then I got to July. And I lost this sweet man here, my stepbrother Jeff. He's a few years younger than me. He died of a drug overdose. He died alone in the street, weeks after calling and leaving a message about how much he loved and missed our family. And I couldn't reach out to him because he was homeless at that point. He didn't have a phone. We don't even know really how he called us. And I grieved that. And then a few months later, at the beginning of November, I lost my stepdad, Dave. He entered my life when I was 5 years old. He was married to my mom for 40 years, and he passed away beginning of November. So 2025, not a great year for me. Lots of suffering, lots of struggle. And I can tell you that in many of these moments, in most of these moments, I felt like a double-minded woman, unstable in all my ways. I was questioning God's motives, questioning his purpose, questioning the point of it all. Nothing felt clear. Nothing felt known. I started expecting the worst thing to happen all the time. What is the worst outcome this situation can have? That's probably what's going to happen. I was trapped inside my own grief cycle, trapped inside my own mind. So a lot of Bible scholars and commentators have also wondered if that's not what we're seeing in the story of Job. What if these three men who are terrible friends and this other guy who appears out of nowhere, what if they're all Job trying to make sense of his story, trying to make sense of the suffering? So frozen that he cannot stop the thought spiral that he is in. What did I do to deserve this? Is God mad at me? Does God even care? Is God punishing me? Why? What did I do to deserve this? Do you see how it can go round and round when you try to make sense of struggle? Whether it's your own or someone else's, there is no sense in it. There is no making sense of brokenness and of grief because we live in a broken world. Amen? This is the cycle we can put ourselves in. We do kind of get a resolution in the book of Job. If you have a moment today or this week or sometime when you're doing your devotions or whenever, I would encourage you to go and read the monologue that God has at the end of this book. Here's the thing. God does not give Job any answers about why he is struggling. He just asks him questions, like hundreds of questions. And they basically all boil down to this. You can't understand this. The goings-on of my universe are not for you to understand. Even if I tried to offer you answers, you would not grasp them. But I am God, and you will have to trust that I am always in control. So earlier, I asked you to focus on this thing, this hard thing, right, that you were going through in 2025. Maybe you're still going through it today. Maybe it's the story of your life. Maybe it will never end. Maybe this is something you will contend with forever. And I have 3 questions that I want you to ask yourself. The first question is this. What have I learned, or what am I learning about myself? Who do I turn to, or what do I turn to in times of struggle? Is it food? Is it media? Is it work? How long does it take me to ask God for help? I encountered a situation just a few days ago, actually, where I was so flustered and upset, I did not know what to do with myself. And it wasn't a major situation, right? It wasn't anyone dying. It wasn't, it was a little tiny thing, but it really threw me for a loop to where I couldn't, contain myself. I couldn't contain my agitation. And it took me, in this processing, it took me an hour of going to my husband and looking in the cabinets and pacing around the house and, flipping through my phone. It took me an hour to put everything down and ask God for help. And to say, God, I am struggling really badly here. This might crush me. What should I do? Can you give me some guidance? What have you learned about yourself in the midst of your struggle? Here's your second question. What have you learned about someone else? Here's what I don't mean. I don't mean, how have you learned that someone else might fail you? I don't mean that, because I have some news for you, and this is a blanket statement. People will always fail you. It's a fact. And I don't mean that in a sad, depressing kind of way, but here's the thing. The people around you are broken and imperfect, and every single one of us is bound by profound limitations when it comes to being there for someone else. There will come a time when you desperately need that voice on the other end of the line, and they're not there. They're asleep. They're on vacation. They're dealing with their own stuff. What I'm asking you here when I say, what have I learned about something else, is this. What have I learned about someone else who might be going through what I'm going through? What insight have I gained? Maybe I understand what it's like to deal with an addictive parent. Or maybe I understand what it's like to take care of an ailing child. Or maybe I understand what financial burden feels like, to feel like you never have enough. Or maybe I just understand why that person who I see at work is in a bad mood every single day. Maybe it's not because they're just a mean person. Maybe they're struggling. What can I learn about someone else in the midst of my struggle? Okay, and here's your third and most important question. What have I learned about the character of God? It's okay to wrestle with this question. God wants us to wrestle. He wants us to come to the table and talk to him. He wants us to ask the hard questions, but here's the thing. You have to be ready for the hard answers. You have to be ready for no answer at all. I know some of you in this room are struggling with something that you have asked God to answer or fix or repair or show you the end of for months, maybe years. You have pled with God. Fix this for me. Tell me what this is about. I need to understand this. And maybe you feel like he's been silent. I can't fix that for you. I can't give you an answer to what that's about today, but I can tell you that God is always, always working for you. Always, always ready on the other side and in the midst of whatever you're going through. God is there, period. What wisdom will you gain from this struggle that you're going about that might bring you closer to the kingdom of heaven? In every ounce of suffering, there is wisdom to be found. And we are, as Fike told us last week, seeking first the kingdom of God, right? If we're doing that, then we are seeking wisdom. Psalm 107 tells us this, but he raises up the needy out of affliction and makes their families like flocks. The upright see it and are glad, and all wickedness shuts its mouth. Whoever is wise, let him attend to these things. Let them consider the steadfast love of the Lord. Steadfast, unwavering, unfailing. God's love is unwavering and unfailing. Always, and maybe even especially in the midst of struggle. And here's some more good news for you. January is not forever, right? And even better news, if you believe in Jesus, suffering is not forever. It might feature big in your story. I can't tell you that the end of your suffering is just around the corner, because it might not be. But I can guarantee you that something greater than you could ever fathom is waiting for you on the other side of this life. And if you ever need a listening ear, I might not be available, but your God always is.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. We want to know, what is your next step? What's the Lord leading you to do next? Would you email us at info@movementchurch.co so we can join you in that next step? We'd love to help you move forward in your relationship with God. By the way, here at TMC, we have a little army of prayer warriors who absolutely love to pray with and for people no matter what they're walking through. You can text a prayer request to this number, 719-800-7729, and our prayer team will pray with you until something changes. If you'd like to contribute financially to the Movement Church, and we'd be so grateful if you would, the easiest way to do it is to text the amount you'd like to give to this phone number, 833-725-0132. You can also find a link on our website, movementchurch.co. Listen, if you live around the Tri-Lakes area, we'd love it if you joined us live for one of our worship services at Bear Creek Elementary in Monument, Colorado at 10 a.m. We will save a seat for you. If there's one thing we want you to know, it's that God is for you, and so are we.